Have you ever had a moment where you can think back and say, wow, that was a transformational experience? I have. I think we all have, maybe even countless times. Last month, I had another transformational experience during jury duty. Now, for most people, jury duty is a plague. Most potential jurors try to escape the tyranny. However, I saw this as an opportunity to listen and learn about our justice system here in South Florida, and to secretly be stuck in a room with strangers that can't leave and I can befriend them all. It's a joy. So I was juror number 55 of 64. And finally, after hearing 54 other jurors, it was my turn to be questioned. Judge Roy Altman of the U.S. District Court calls on me. He first asks if I knew anyone on either the defendant or prosecutor side. I said, and this is when things began to get weird. I looked at the lead prosecutor, Abby Waxman, and I said, I think I married Abby's sister. The judge looks at me, he laughs, and he goes, you don't know if that's your sister-in-law? To which I said, no, I get the confusion. I'm a rabbi. I do a lot of marriages. I think I married her sister. Well, Abby Waxman, also known as Abby Finkel, a member of our temple, assistant U.S. attorney, took her head and went like this. She pulls it up and she says, Judge, he performed the bris on my son. Judge Altman, without even thinking, blurted out, Mazel tov. To be clear, so far everything I've said is true. The next question was if I, as a Coral Gables police chaplain, could be unbiased in a case of conspiracy to murder versus the FBI, evidence brought forth by the FBI, Miami-Dade police, and different police departments throughout the country. Here I am, in front of everyone, including the person whose life really hangs in the balance, and I stopped to think, could I be unbiased? I so wanted to be. I was honest, but far from done sharing thoughts. I had to share something deep inside of me. And I said, and I quote, in a month's time, Judge, I will be standing before the Judge of Judges, professing my sins, asking God to inscribe me in the book of life. I'll be leading my community in prayer, fasting, mourning, deeply reflecting on life, and ultimately promoting hope. This moment is profound for me as a potential juror. The judge looked at me, said, thank you. Juror number 55, you may be seated. To no surprise, I was not picked for that jury. I didn't expect to be so overwhelmed by God that day. When I least expected it, I experienced in a crowded, cold courtroom the awe of Adonai. I think back to our forefather, Yaakov, Jacob, who slept outside in the desert and had this dream, this incredible dream where angels going up and down a ladder. And he awoke from that dream, picked up his head from the rock of which he was laying on, and he said these words, God is in this place. And I didn't even know it. And these, my friends, are the very words that everyone in this sanctuary walked through to get into this sanctuary. It is adorned on those walls, on those doors. To process God in the courtroom that day was incredibly humbling, mildly terrifying, profoundly grounding. Tonight, we talk about God. Now, before some of you ignore me, shut me down, hear me out. Not all of us currently believe in God. I understand. For a long time, I didn't either. For me, God and Judaism, they really do go hand in hand. And Judaism without God is still Judaism. We are called Yisrael because we struggle with God or even the notion of God's existence. Your rabbis, your clergy, your cantor, we respect your beliefs. And as one of your rabbis, I really want to hear your thoughts about your relationship with your Creator. And that's a conversation, and one that I actually deeply look forward to having with you. You see, God is not only personal, but processing that relationship can be difficult. So to be clear, the God that you don't believe in, I don't either. A man with a beard commanding the world by his very fingertips, that's not my God. And I hope not yours. So we have to get deeper. God and spirituality play a role in our faith. Spirituality is a connection to something internal, an acknowledgement that there is a relationship between our soul and the world around us. Sometimes it's defined as the other. Maybe it's Mother Nature, consciousness, humanism, higher self, or soulfulness. So feel free tonight. Change the name of God to whatever you feel comfortable with. When I say God or Adonai, you may say something else. That's okay, as long as it allows you to connect to something more than ourselves. So it's time to connect to the spiritual side of our world. It's time to invite God back into our lives and for us to actively search for depth and meaning in a world far too invested in the pursuit of materialism, self-pride, and power. How do we do this? Rabbi Jeff Salkin, a friend of this community and certainly of your clergy, he taught, God is only God when we make God, God. Let me say that again. God is only God when we make God, God. This year, let's reacquaint ourselves to Adonai. For far too long, we have turned our back on God, choosing to scroll through social media posts about body images, wealth, power, and corruption. Far too long, we have shunned the notion that God's existence is legitimate and real. And far too long, we as Reformed Jews neglected to build a relationship with the holiness of our faith, God, by studying, praying, learning, acting, and talking about God, and talking to God. It's time for us to make God, God, by reinviting Adonai into our lives. Let's reclaim the sacred bond. Where can we experience God? Certainly we can find God on the beaches of Miami, watching the sunrise, or in the deserts of Israel, just staring up at night at the stars. Or we can experience God right here in this beautiful sacred space of our sanctuary, or in the sacred space of the houses of the judicial system in Miami. Remember that God is everywhere. There's a story about a young boy who was observing Passover for the very first time in college. His roommate brought over his girlfriend with a steaming hot, wonderful, this is why I can't give this sermon on Yom Kippur, pizza. Delicious. For the first time, he turned to his roommate and his girlfriend and he said, I can't have the pizza, it's chametz, and I'm forbidden for the next 8 days. Sure enough, his roommate says, that's okay, just go eat it in the closet, no one will know. Fun fact, God is in the closet with you. God or spirituality can be experienced anywhere and everywhere. Theologian Martin Buber reminds us, God is within us, Adonai exists not only within us, but also between us. So I invite you this year to bring God into your world, your lives, to your very soul. Rainn Wilson, famous actor and comedic writer from the TV show, my very favorite, The Office, wrote a book called Soul Boom. And in it, he describes the need for America to reclaim our soul. Our challenge, according to Rainn, is that we are fixated more on the materialism than the perfecting of our soul. We tend to align more with what we want versus what we spiritually need as humans and certainly as Jews. Let's invite God into our lives as we navigate the world. Doing so will give us rich purpose, profound meaning, balancing the materialism of the world with the spirituality of our soul, which we so desire. Doing so will connect us to generations past and help us pave the future, the way for a better future. And there's never a better time to engage in this spiritual pursuit. 5784 can be the year that we make time to connect not only with others, but with God. We can do this in 3 ways: prayer, study, mitzvot. Our faith is based on these 3 principles to help us be our best versions of ourselves. And we can do so much more than just these 3. Think outside of the box. Or if you need help, ask our very own senior rabbi. Rabbi Siegel explained to me just recently that every morning she wakes up, she steps outside barefoot, gets onto the grass, takes a deep breath, exhales, and begins her morning blessings. I've watched our dear friend Charles Bernstein on Zoom. He dances through the Micha Mocha. Since the beginning of the pandemic, his dancing has only gotten better and better. Sandy Berger, our very own past president Sandy Berger, rocks out her tambourine. These physical actions connect them to prayer, but through their movements, they connect to something more. By watching them or listening to the beats of the drum, we can also be lifted to new heights. The key is making space for such a connection. Let's embrace God daily. God connects us to other Jews, to Eretz Yisrael, grounds us into Kunolam and the fight against anti-Semitism, and is also our profound and deep connection to mitzvot, helping others, being respectful and inclusive. This is God's work for us. A connection to God is critically important in building the foundation of our religion, peoplehood, and Jewish practice. Yearly, I get inspired by our Rosh Hashanah's Torah portion, the Akedah, the binding of Isaac. Sometimes understood as Abraham being faithful, and other times misunderstanding what God is really asking. Every year I go back and forth, but the struggle of processing God's power, that's the relationship. We learn so much about faith from Avraham Avinu, Abraham our father. At times he argues, at times he listens, at times he follows, and at times he stops to just question and argue. And yet each interaction is one of interconnection. We too can have this relationship. Let's go back to Facebook. Our relationship should be nothing more than complicated. It's throughout these different kinds of relationships with God, informal, private, angry, questioning, maybe deeply rooted in theological study, or that childish glow of knowledge that we can reestablish something real and wholesome. I talk about God tonight because I see this huge shift in our world's religions. The fastest growing world religions are ones that embrace God through action, prayer, and conversation. I'm worried that the more we go down a path of action without God or conversation without embracing our spiritual side, we will set in motion an unstoppable trend of people and of faith without Adonai. Being a Jew means more than bagels. It means more than lighting candles on Hanukkah. It's about connection. Connection to each other, certainly. Connection to homeland, most definitely. Judaism at its core is about connection to God. Let's understand the why of this statement. Why have faith? Maybe it's what sets you apart from everyone else, being B'nai Yisrael. Your why or my why will and can be different. For me, God grounds me in purpose. The reason for me to do mitzvot, I process, is because of God, the Torah, and it pushes me to explore with more authenticity both the ancient and the modern teachings of our faith. Why God? Because I know that right here in this space is something profound. Not only in this space, but in the space that is in each and every one of your souls is godly. I sense it, I feel it, I know it. Can we take one step closer to understanding our why with God? This year, let's step towards God. Now, we can do this really with just one step at a time, literally one step. 2 weeks ago, I had the honor of standing under the chuppah of two friends, Morgan and Moises, recorded and sent to me. Same day was a 20-second clip of the groom breaking the glass. I showed it to my daughters, who had so many questions. Why does the man only do it? It's a good question. What type of glass is it? Does it come with a straw? Does it hurt? What does it even mean? For my 5- and 7-year-old, their curiosity really sparked my own. And I told them the traditions of the glass and my favorite teaching of all. The breaking of the glass is yet another reminder that we are in a partnership with Adonai, restoring the brokenness of the world. God no longer creates the same way of which Genesis began. We must create alongside Adonai. Thus, the stepping of the glass reminds us that we are an integral link in the chain of godliness. One step, one action, one thought can bring God back into our lives. Temple Judea. The very name of Temple Judea means the temple of being grateful to God. Yehudah, Judah, means being grateful to Adonai. I am grateful that God gave us a personal relationship. We don't need to pray to anyone or anything to have our prayers heard. We go straight to the source. The source, God. God is judge and jury and lawyer. And we are always in God's courts, not only being judged, but longing for us to return the summons to show up and reconnect. Court, my friends, is always open, and God is always listening. Now, after I completed my jury duty, 2 incredible things happened. The same night of jury duty, another juror researched where I worked and donated to my mitzvah fund in honor of her father. A godly connection was made that day. The following day, and it gets even more weirder, the following day, while my wife was waiting in line for coffee at our daughter's school, a tall gentleman cleared his throat, excused himself, and said, I'm not sick. I was in jury selection for 6+ hours yesterday. Sure enough, behind my wife was Judge Altman. By happenstance, our families send our children to the same Jewish day school. By godly intervention, my time with Judge Altman as juror and judge was not fully served. What I thought was one moment in time has continued, even weeks after that moment in court. We can't escape the divine pull of connection we have with God, because at the very core of our faith, we must remember that God is only God if we make God God. Let's bring back God into our lives. Let's turn and face God panim el panim, face to face, as we recommit ourselves to godliness, spirituality, and holiness. Our rededication to God begins now, this year, right now, tonight. The experience of the courtroom reminds me of these days, opening our eyes to see that God is before us, not just now, but always, which is why Rosh Hashanah mentions almost nothing of teshuvah. It's not about apologizing and atoning. That's Yom Kippur. We'll get there. Rosh Hashanah is about belonging. We see this in the 3 sections of our service. Malchiyot, which is God is our creator. Zichronot, remembering all that God has provided. And finally, the shofarot, calling us to return to God. These 3 themes tether and bind and keep us close to Adonai. Let's discover God. Let's put God back into our hearts, on our minds, and our souls. With gratitude to God comes appreciation of the daily miracles that we enjoy, of life, of family, friends, even our pets, the world around us, nature, and this very, very community. I invite you after Shabbat services in the coming months, not tonight, to have a meal with me and to talk about God. Be on the lookout for dates for our informal gathering, which will allow us to talk and share and converse about our own spiritual journeys. The atmosphere of this dinner will be an open and brave space to listen, engage, and help us all build an everlasting partnership with our Creator. Let's have a serious conversation about our faith. Your God summons you back to court. Don't ignore it. Don't avoid it. Don't throw the summons away. God is inviting you back into a relationship. Accept it. Show up and know that your life will be fruitful and rewarding. Join me on this journey as Temple Judea embarks on welcoming God back into our lives. Shana Tova. We continue on page 82 with our Aleinu. This is incredibly unorthodox. I don't even know what that means at this point after that sermon I just gave. I've noticed we have some younger children. It is Shabbat, and it would give us great pleasure to invite up any young children who are here tonight who would like to open up the Aron Kodesh, the Ark, to do so, as we invite you on page 82 to please rise for our Aleinu.
Aleinu l'shabeach l'Adon hakol l'ateit gedula le'yotzer bereshit shelo osanu kegoyei ha'aratzot velo samanu kemishpachot ha'adama shelo samchel keinu kahem v'goraleinu kechol hamonam v'anachnu koreim u'mishachavim u'modim lifnei melech malachei amlachim HaKadosh Baruch Hu HaKadosh Baruch Hu.
we remain standing on page 89. The life of eternity. The light of life is a finite flame. Like our sacred candles, life is kindled, it burns, it glows, it is radiant with warmth and beauty, but soon it fades, its substance is consumed, and it is no more. In light we see, in light we are seen, the flames dance and our lives are full. But as night follows day, the candles of our life burns down in gutters. There is an end to the flames, we see no more and are no more seen. Yet we do not despair, for we are more than a memory slowly fading into the darkness. With our lives we give life, something of us can never die. We move in the eternal cycle of darkness and death, of light and life. Our thoughts turn to loved ones whom death has taken from us in recent days and those who died at the seasons in years past. Our hearts open as well to the wider circle of loss in our community and wherever grief touches the human family. Zichronam livracha, may their memories be a blessing in this new year and always. Together on page 90. Yitkadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabba, amen. Be'alma divra chirutei ve'al mich malchutei. B'chayachon u'v'yomechon u'v'chayei dechol beit Yisrael. B'agala u'bizman kariv ve'imru. Amen. Yehei shmei Rabba mevarach le'olam u'lamei almaya. Yidbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh. V'yitadar v'yitalei v'yitalal shemei d'kudusha barichu. Leola minko birchata v'shirata, tushbechata v'nechemata, da'amiran be'ama ve'imru, amen. Yehei shlama rabba min shemayim v'chayim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael ve'imru, amen. Osei shalom bimromav, huya asei shalom, aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael ve'al kol yoshvei tevel ve'imru, amen. May the source of peace bestow peace on all who mourn, and may we be a source of comfort to all who are bereaved, as we all say, amen.
Oh, say shalom bimromav, hu yaseh shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael.